What's good, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to tonight's video. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I've got my green shirt on. I'm in the bar right now, you can see. Now, Mike is not present with me, so I've had to do all of this by myself, but, I've got the hat. Happy days. So in tonight's little video, we're going to be talking about a few things. Now, we're going to dive into the Silicon Valley Bank story again on the idea that a hedge fund had predicted Silicon Valley Bank's fall. More importantly, we're going to take a look at the strikes that are hitting the UK right now. Nearly 500,000 people are walking the streets protesting in regards to an increase in pay. Other than that, we've also got the main options expiry happening, which will bring huge volatility to the marketplace. And then, of course, we'll be looking at Bitcoin's mad price action. So if you are new to the channel, hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe. Let's have a conversation. So we have Bitcoin on the 30-minute time frame, and we have seen a wonderful move to the upside. In last night's trading session, Bitcoin just managed to make the beautiful move and take out yesterday's high and recover this previous area of wicks. Now, how could we predetermine that this was likely to happen? Well, here's an example right here. We go into the smaller time frames, and you can see that the 5-minute time frame was showing the interest to push price up. So if you look here, you can see you've got green vector zone. Let me just remove this. Green vector zone right here, another green vector, and then this green and red vector candle. This was the start of it. All right. Now, this is where I came to the understanding that price was going to go up. So if we go over to the Patreon of the channel, you can see I shared it last night in this video. And we marked off this red and green vector candle region. And in this update, I explained to them that I anticipated Bitcoin, as long as it can break above this VWAP region, then we would anticipate Bitcoin to move higher, to consolidate, to initiate another spike, to come back down again. This, in essence, is the play before FOMC. So you're always wanting to work out how likely is Bitcoin going to follow a direction. And the only way you can do that is by just looking and making the assumption, because that's what trading is all about. You are taking probability and putting it to the test. How likely is it going to go from one spot to the next based on what is happening in the marketplace? Okay? Now, you can see that they had moved away from the daily open in the previous day's session, which suggested to me a little bit of strength. Now, this was a short-term play itself. Now, when we go into the actual chart itself, we can see that Bitcoin, go back into the here's the 5-minute time frame. There it is right there. They come back into that red vector candle region and fully recovered the zone. Then if we go into the higher time frames, we can see that the play so far, so good, is going and coming into fruition. So we see the big markup by Mr. Market Maker. And then we're anticipating price to consolidate sideways, to make the move up, to then come back down again. But the big move came in from last night. Now, this is on speculation that the Federal Reserve is likely to do 25 basis points or hold. Now, you can see in the stock market already, there's, bonds are rallying, so investors are seeking safety. They don't want to expose their capital. We go back into the charts themselves, and we can see, of course, like Euro starting to come back up ever so slightly, looking back into the recovery of the red vector candle region right here. Let's have a look at SHIB, because we mentioned yesterday SHIB had that problem with the chain ID. Have they recovered the vectors? Yes, they have. They've come back and taken that liquidity that we shared yesterday, because the idea was in last night's video was to assume that if there was an opportunity to be had, the marking down of price led investors to sell everything. But then if they, of course, resolve the issue of chain ID, then it likely looked to try and come back up again. And it looks like they might have solved it. Even if they haven't, the presence of the chart shows that investors have come back in and put money into Shiba because Bitcoin's moving. The general market is pumping up. All right. Now, we quickly go over to the dollar dominance, and dollar dominance has fully recovered the green vector candle regions right here. Look at this. Back into vector zones, and it's back into the last area of support. If the dollar dominance collapses from here, then the markets are just going to go crazy and shoot further up. but we just had a notification. That notification has said that the Federal Reserve is likely to increase interest rates just to 25 basis points and maybe hold, but it all depends on the market's response. Response to what? So, okay then. So from now, okay, until the Federal Reserve meeting. So look at this. If we go over to the chart, into the calendar, you can see Wednesday the 22nd, we're going to have the economic projections, the statement, the funds rate, and the press conference. So in principle, we have 2 days before that for the market to just move the charts. If they are still happy about things, then happy days. They're just going to keep on pumping money into the marketplace. But I will also warn you about something. The options expiry. We are set for huge volatility. Now, I need to address something to you guys. When options expire, the market can be very, very volatile. Now, if you're in trades and you're going to be sat through those options expiry, hopefully most of the traders are in essence in the money during the expiration. Because what might actually happen is price can actually shoot up in your favor or shoot straight back down against you. So try and make sure that you are locking in profits so that you're not caught off guard. How many times have we been here before, ladies and gentlemen? How many times does the FOMC meet? How many times do we respond to news announcements? It's a cyclical thing. It always happens. And if you're in positive trades, take some money, lock in the profit, and whatever happens is irrelevant. You've got your money locked and safe. So we know that there are 3 banks right now that are going through a bit of a crisis. Signature Bank, Silicon Valley Bank, and of course, First Republic. We know that First Republic has received a bit of a bailout by JP Morgan, Bank of America, and Citibank, Wells Fargo. In other words, they're all joining together and contributing to save this bank to the sum of around $30 billion. Now, Bank of America is stepping in and considering purchasing Signature Bank. And you can see from the article here that they will only get involved with Signature Bank if uninsured deposits are protected. And the cost of capital is going to rise for smaller banks. Doesn't this look like a monopoly? Doesn't it look like that all the big banks now are capitalizing on the downfall of these smaller banks? Check this out. Here is a list of all the companies that were under the Silicon Valley Bank. Payoneer, Global Incorporated, currently shares at $6.03. These guys had roughly around $20 million in the bank itself, that's Silicon Valley. Let's go to another one. Roku. Roku, trading lower, starting to come back up. They too had around $25-30 million with this bank. But you can see what's going on. Investors ain't too happy about it. These guys now are going to want to go to much more reputable banks. Look at the companies. Roku develops streaming entertainment devices for delivering entertainment to the television. Let's look at something else. Rocket Labs manufactures rockets and spacecraft intended to get to orbit and remove barriers to commercial space. Let me give you one more. Ginkgo Bioworks, medical and biomedicine. Currently trading at $1.28. Provides biotechnology platform to enable customers to program cells as easily as programming computers. Are we not thinking something here? Roll with me on this one. You've got these banks. Well, Silicon Valley Bank has now collapsed. You think these companies that we've just mentioned are going to do business with any smaller banks? Nah. They're going to want to get involved in bigger banks. That's why all these banks are stepping in to save them, so that these companies that are got their deposits held with Silicon Valley Bank are in essence going to turn to those bigger banks. Look at the technology that these companies are providing. It's all for the future. Think about it. I mean, we can speculate. But would you not want to get involved with a company like a biotech company that can allow you to program cells no different to programming computers? Or Roku, that provides streaming facilities for people. Everybody loves Netflix. Everybody loves to kick back on the sofa. Why would you not want to be a part of a company that could potentially end up being as big as Netflix? Well, if you're the bank that's supplying the liquidity and you're managing the finances for them, happy days. You've got to remember, Silicon Valley Bank was roughly generating around $512 million on revenue at the services they were providing for managing these companies' liquidity. So that means, that's why I'm saying, like, all these big banks are now coming in and swiping everything up. You don't think they've dived into the companies that have lost or got deposits tied up with Silicon Valley Bank? Because if they didn't have any interest in the companies behind Silicon Valley Bank who had their liquidity trapped, they wouldn't be bailing them out. So something sinister could be happening right now. Now, if we remember in last night's video, we were talking about Bitcoin trying to eat that 800 EMA. And it's tried to make its way towards it, but it's now starting to pull back ever so slightly. Now, the word on the street is suggesting that Bitcoin and assets all across the board are getting ready for the Federal Reserve meeting. They are projecting that 25 basis points could be on the cards, or they may pause. But they did say it depends on how the market reacts. So in other words, from now until Wednesday, the 22nd, if the market keeps on pumping and pumping and pumping, the Federal Reserve may have to pull out some extreme measures, because it's going to be hard enough knowing that the labor market is still hot, which will be the common theme for the Federal Reserve at the FOMC meeting. They either save the dollar or they save the economy. Something has to give. We know Silicon Valley Bank is now in the process of bankruptcy. But there was a hedge fund that kind of predicted this was going to happen. Check this out. A hedge fund called Holdco. It's an asset management company. And they had a valuation on Silicon Valley Bank, and they started to draw up some conclusions which kind of gave the red flags about Silicon Valley. They noticed that their gains as a percentage of pre-tax income, over the last few years, there was some consistency. 2016, 14%. Then 2017, 14%. 13% for 2018. Then we get an 18% increase at 2019. Then it shoots up to 38% in 2020. Now, the article goes in to explain how this was not a sustainable thing. Its price earnings revenue it wasn't consistent with what was going on in the world. Now, this was in the pandemic. This company had come to the understanding that Silicon Valley Bank's valuation as a stock was overly priced. It needed to come back to its true and fair value. If we go over to the price itself of Silicon Valley, you can see it was priced around that time at about $700 a share. There it is. $763 a share. And you can see it's actually stopped trading and is now at $106 per share. That was the last time it traded. And that stopped trading on Thursday, the 9th of March, 2023. So when they came up with it was 2 years ago. So in 2020, they came up with the idea that this Silicon Valley Bank was not sustainable. And this was roughly around this area here, around December time. And you can see already it was going up. And that's when they thought it was what? Too much value. It needed to come back to its fair value. And that was when it was at $361 a share. Shoots up nearly double in price to only come back down again. This leads me on to the idea for you guys, if you are looking to invest in stocks, considering fundamentals. Look at the idea of this. If a company provides a service, does that service show that it's serving people? So you would naturally see their quarterly earnings increase. And usually if they're accelerating, so if it's up 14%, then it goes to 15%, then it goes to 18%, you can see that's an acceleration in the company's earnings. That's good news. It means that the product's doing well. But when you start seeing these increases and they start to become wild increases, it's not consistent with good times or bad times in the actual marketplace or the service that they're providing, you're going to leave yourself a question and say, hold on a second, is that figure an anomaly? You know, what was the reason why Silicon Valley Bank had 38% increase when the past 5 years before, it was just consistently at 14, 13, and then 18? These are like red flags that you can consider when you are investing in stocks based on their fundamentals. Because that's the thing with stocks. It's always going to be, is it overly valued? And it's the same with Bitcoin. Do people think Bitcoin is cheap enough to buy now? Or what if it's overly valued? We will know that the way price moves. In other news, over 500,000 people are hitting the streets in the UK with these strikes underway. Nurses, teachers, doctors, they're all trying to knock on the government's door for an increase in pay, for a quality of work conditions, especially in the NHS. It's bad. It's not good. And that will disrupt the everyday of the UK. But with that being said, even though you can see lots of people, commuters, especially in London, not able to access the tubes, they're in support for these people. And so should they be. If you've been to the UK and you see how they are working in those hospitals, it's madness. You're surprised how they actually get to see people with the limitations that they are given. Doctors getting a 26% cut on their budgets, like that's not good. At the end of the day, people are sick and they still become sick. And if you're cutting the services just for budget purposes, you're killing people, man. So if you've made it this far, ladies and gentlemen, mad love and respect for watching the video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you head over to tradersreality.com where you can download the hybrid system. And you can, of course, check out the Patreon where we do daily projections on Bitcoin's movements throughout the day. But more importantly, drink responsibly. Don't go too crazy. I mean, I've got my old hat right here. And I'm going to end this on a traditional Irish goodbye.